Once upon a time in the beautiful city of U stood a prestigious boarding school named Gradus College. It was a mixed boarding school, and every parent wanted their children to attend. The entrance exam was very hard. Only a few students passed and got in. A girl named was one of those who got in on her first try. She was extremely smart and scored the highest on the exam. Her mother was a poor trader who didn't even know her daughter had taken the entrance exam. Gradus College had always seemed out of reach, but Ma had dreams bigger than poverty. She secretly studied every night using books borrowed from her neighbor and practiced with questions from the local library. When she saw the free entrance exam notice on the school wall, Ma was thrilled. Even though she knew she couldn't afford the fees, she applied secretly, walked to the exam alone, and sat confidently among the daughters of lawyers, bankers, and politicians. Worked extremely hard on the exam as if her life depended on it. When results came out, her name topped the list. The owner of Gradus College, Mr. Felix Udia, a stern but fair man who loved academic excellence, was shocked when he saw her score, higher than any child who had ever taken the entrance exam. When registration began, he couldn't afford the registration fee, let alone the very high tuition. She sat in her mother's market store, heartbroken at the thought of losing her spot. Her mother noticed how sad she looked and asked what was wrong, but couldn't tell her. She knew how sad it would make her mother to know she couldn't afford the fees. As the registration deadline approached, and got the biggest surprise of her life. Her mother came home from the market with shocking news. Representatives from the school had told her that Ma had been given a full scholarship. They said her tuition, uniform, books, and food would all be paid for by the school. Was the first scholarship student at Gradus College and couldn't believe it. She jumped up in excitement, looking forward to starting at her dream school. Her mother sat her down one night to tell her how proud she was and advised them to focus on her studies and pray as she started this new chapter, and cried at the thought of leaving her poor mother alone. On the first day, she packed her things in an old metal trunk her uncle had fixed for her. Inside were her old textbooks, neatly folded uniforms, and a bucket with her only food supplies, Gary, sugar, and some dry groundnuts. She arrived at the college gates with her mother, eyes wide with excitement at the beautiful campus, who said goodbye to her mother and began settling into her new school. Her roommates kept their distance, thinking she was just a charity case since she was on scholarship, and stayed focused as she always had been. She read while others gossiped. She prayed when others partied in the corners of the dormitory. Her mother's words stayed with her. Let your silence speak through your success. But at Gradus College, silence could be dangerous. Status was everything, and Ma was seen as the charity case of the entire school. Her roommates ignored her and whispered when she walked by. They laughed at her Gary and groundnut meals while they enjoyed their expensive snacks. Ma became desperate to belong. She decided to make friends with the most popular girl in school, Eva, who was a top politician's daughter. Eva's best friend, Udori, was very protective and didn't want anyone else close to them, but didn't care. She wanted to be popular and thought Eva was her best chance. One day, Ma approached Eva. I want to be your friend, she said, her voice shaking as Eva laughed in disbelief. What makes you think we'd ever want to be friends with a charity case like you? Eva's friend asked as Ma stood there, humiliated. Eva, seeing how desperate Ma was, agreed on one condition. You'll have to prove yourself to us that you're ready to roll with the big girls. Ma promised to do anything to prove herself. That was when everything changed, and M's life changed for the worse. The task seemed simple, but Ma didn't know her life would never be the same afterward. Eva handed her a substance to drink, and Ma, though hesitant, drank it without questions. The next few hours were a blur as Ma found herself lying in the middle of the school field alone at 3 o'clock in the morning with no idea how she got there. She quickly dragged herself back to the dormitory where everyone seemed to be asleep. Confused and shaken, she climbed into bed wondering what had happened. The next morning, Ma woke up feeling strange. She went to class and met Eva, who didn't even look at her, and couldn't stop thinking about what might have happened. Her head was foggy, and she still felt unusually weak. What had Eva given her? What had it made her do? And tried to confront Eva, but Eva pretended not to know what she was talking about. The more masked, the more Eva made her feel like she was crazy. Weeks passed, and still had no answers. She struggled in her classes, unable to focus, her hands shaking as she tried to write. Her classmates noticed how pale she looked but said nothing. After all, she was just the poor girl lucky enough to be among the children of the elite. One evening, as students left the cafeteria, collapsed unconscious, they rushed her to the school clinic, where they discovered had ingested a harmful substance that severely damaged her kidney. The school nurse looked at the lab results with horror and referred her to a specialist hospital. By the time reached the hospital in U, her condition had worsened. The doctors said she needed a kidney transplant, or she would only have a few weeks to live. It's Eva. She gave me a substance to drink, and told her mother, who went to complain to the school principal. She told him everything her daughter had said, but the principal said M was a troubled child. M was very troubled, and we did our best to guide her. But unfortunately, the environment she came from had already shaped her decisions. Mr. Felix Udia said coldly, explaining that the school had zero tolerance for indiscipline. Her mother sat there stunned, knowing her daughter wasn't like that at all. Are you saying my daughter is at fault? She was poisoned, and the doctors say she needs a kidney transplant, she said to Mr. Felix, who told her she would hear from the school within 24 hours. And her mother received a letter saying had been expelled from Gratis College. The letter mentioned misconduct, dangerous behavior, and breaking school rules. It didn't mention Eva or any other student, instead blaming everything on M because of her disadvantaged background. The letter stated that the school had gone out of its way to help a child from a poor background. But children of this sort always bring shame to the very hands that tried to help them. M's mother held the letter with trembling hands, her eyes filled with tears. Her daughter lay unconscious, fighting for her life. She had no money, and no one who could fight this unfairness. Gratis College, once a dream come true for her daughter, had become a terrible nightmare. Soon, newspapers were filled with articles calling them the product of a rotten society. Her pictures and her mother's were everywhere, with stories saying how Gratis College's first scholarship student turned out to be a drug user who tried to get other students to use drugs too. The school publicly ended its scholarship program, using M's case as the main reason. The news spread quickly, with every media outlet sharing a twisted version of the story to protect the school's image. It became a national disgrace. Her mother was shamed for neglecting her daughter. They turned her into an example of what happens when society gives opportunities to the wrong people. Her dreams were buried under headlines, and her truth was silenced by carefully written lies. No one mentioned how M had topped the entrance exam. No one remembered how the school once celebrated her brilliance. Now she was just a scholarship girl who turned out to be a drug abuser. Her mother, heartbroken but determined, stood at the hospital gates begging anyone who would listen to help save her child. Most people walked away, while others who recognized her judged her for her daughter's situation. Then she met Abong, a young journalist who had been following M's story closely. Abong wasn't just any journalist. He was once a student at Gratis College who had witnessed something similar years ago. He had seen a major cover-up at the school that was never talked about again. A classmate of his died in unusual circumstances, and the school covered it up as an accident, blaming the dead student for being careless. What really happened was that bullies had threatened a student named Ku to jump into the school's water tank, or they would expose his secret. Ku jumped and never came out alive. The students ran away, pretending not to know what happened. Days passed before an anonymous report reached the school owner, who quietly cleaned up without alerting authorities. When Ku's parents were finally told, the school said their son was rebellious and impossible to control. The parents had no choice but to bury their son, and the incident was never in the news. When Abong heard about he knew history was repeating itself. Seeing how the media twisted the story to make M look bad, just like the school had done to Ku, Abong refused to stay silent this time. He began a secret investigation and found out the school was looking for a literature teacher. Abong applied, and Mr. Felix was happy to hire a former student. As Abong started working at the school, the girls couldn't keep their eyes off him. They all had crushes on him and giggled when he walked by. One day, Eva approached Abong for help, saying she was struggling with literature and asking if he could give her extra lessons after study period. Abong agreed, seeing this as a chance to learn the truth about him. What Abong didn't know was that Eva's friend Udori was watching. She had admired Abong since he joined the school. There was something different about him. The way he taught, the quiet fire in his eyes, and how he treated each student as important. He wasn't just another teacher. He was real, and Udori wanted him to notice her. So when she saw Eva spending time with Abong after study period, pretending to struggle with literature, a subject she always did well in, jealousy grew inside Udori. That night, Udori couldn't sleep. She tossed and turned, worried that Abong would fall for Eva. The next evening, she slipped a handwritten note into Ubong's drawer in the staff room. If you're not who I think you are, meet me behind the old laboratory after study period, and I'll tell you everything. Curious but careful, Abong went to the meeting place and found Udori standing in her school uniform, arms folded, looking nervous but relieved. I want to talk, she said quickly before she could change her mind. I don't know why I'm doing this. Maybe because I want you to know the truth, or maybe because I'm tired of living with the guilt, or maybe it's because I like you and I want you to see that I'm not like her. Abong didn't speak. He just listened as Udori told him everything. She confessed how Eva had given the drink that evening, and how they all watched from a distance, laughing as she staggered across the field, thinking it was just a silly prank. But it wasn't, Udori said, her voice shaking. It wasn't just a joke. We didn't know it would get that bad. Eva said it was a detox, something her cousin used to lose weight. I didn't question it. None of us did. But when Emma collapsed, and we saw her in the clinic, I knew something had gone terribly wrong. I wanted to speak out, but Eva threatened me. She said if I ever opened my mouth, she'd ruin me. Abong stood silently, his jaw tight. He could feel years of injustice rising in his chest like fire. Will you help her? Udori asked in a whisper. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but M does. She didn't deserve what happened to her. Abong nodded slowly. Yes, he said, but we need more than just words. Udori gave him a flash drive. There's a video. I was recording the prank that night just for fun, but it caught everything. Drinking, laughing, even when we all ran away after she passed out. That was all Abong needed. By the next morning, the truth had a voice. Abong sent the footage and Udori's confession to national news outlets, bloggers, human rights groups, and legal activists. This time, the story couldn't be buried. The video went viral. Public outrage erupted across social media. Hashtags like #JusticeForum trended worldwide. Gradus College faced intense criticism. The Ministry of Education shut the school down for investigation. Eva and her parents were called in, and within days she was arrested. Mr. Felix Udia, the once respected school owner, was questioned about his negligence, cover-up, and damaging a minor's reputation. The school's board was dissolved. The school's carefully built reputation collapsed overnight. As for M, she finally got the help she needed. Donations poured in from people across the country, strangers who read her story and saw her for what she truly was. A brilliant child failed by a broken system. She had the transplant and slowly began to recover. Her mother stayed by her side the whole time, praying, holding her hand, and assuring her she would be fine. Months later, when M could walk again, she gave a TV interview. Her voice was soft, but every word was clear. I wanted to belong, but now I know that I was never the problem. The system that made me feel like I wasn't enough. That was the problem. She turned to the camera and smiled. To every girl out there who feels invisible, you are not. Your truth matters. Udori was expelled from Gradus College along with Eva, but she left with something her friend never had, a clear conscience. She later wrote an open letter apologizing to him publicly. Abong won a Human Rights Journalism Award that year for exposing elitism and institutional injustice. His story helped reform scholarship policies and started conversations about bullying and discrimination in elite schools across the country. He eventually returned to a different school and graduated with honors. She went on to study law and dedicated her life to protecting children like herself. In the end, her story didn't just change a school, it changed a nation. She became more than the girl who topped an entrance exam. She became a voice, a survivor, and eventually a symbol of justice. The lesson from this story is that justice might be delayed, but it will never be denied. Boarding schools don't just educate, they shape children into the adults they will become. Children can be influenced, broken, or built behind closed doors. So, parents, learn to be present, stay involved, ask questions, and show up unexpectedly, because silence, while powerful, can sometimes hide things that need to be seen.